Hi everyone, welcome back to the Blood Ties podcast. I'm Molly Wansell and I'm here with my father, Geoffrey Wansell.
Hello, welcome back everyone. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy the podcasts, and we're very grateful to you for this. We call it Blood Ties to Return.
You've given it a lot of names.
We have.
Yeah.
Well, I like that.
Okay.
I think lots of names always helps.
You do you.
So, we'll be going to exhibitions.
Oh, I was going to talk to you about something.
Okay.
I listened to an interview yesterday with a man, and now I can't remember his name, but you will know his mum is Sally Challen, who was convicted of murdering her husband, and then it was reduced to manslaughter because the argument was that she had been undergoing coercive control by this man for her whole life, and she killed herself in self-defense, basically.
Yes.
But her son has written a book about it. I thought it was really interesting because he was sort of being interviewed and talking about his experience of being her child and what happened and learning the language of coercive control. And his mum had met his dad when she was 15 and he was 21. So it was like, well, you could say then that he groomed her and she'd never known any different. Do you know what I mean? But the thing I thought that was really interesting about it, and I can send you the podcast to have a listen to, and this guy's written a book, it was very clear about having the language to describe coercive control and what it's like for women to be in relationships that they really struggle to get out of, even though externally we might look at it and be like, why would you be in that? Because that's something that you talk about a lot. And, no dismissiveness to you, that's not a word. He was like, the worst question you can ask is like, why do they stay?
Yes.
In which you often ask.
Yes. The answer, of course, is they do because they do.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting. He talked really eloquently and interestingly around that specific scenario and the fact that she didn't happen that long ago.
No. And
how he, the language to describe it, such as coercive control, etc., didn't even really exist. So is your grooming, whatever. So even understanding that these things were happening.
Well, actually, the language is the most important almost element because we didn't know what coercive control was. We just thought, oh.
Right. So he said during the trial, lots and lots of witnesses said his mother was controlled by his father, but only used the word control, not coercive control. No. And so the jury still were like, yes, fine, but she still killed him, kind of thing.
Yes, I think that the incredible thing about all of that is that the language helps us to describe something which we knew was going on, but we have to find the language, the vocabulary to describe it.
And language is so specific in law.
Very much
right?
so.
And if it doesn't adhere to the legal
definitions,
yes. Then you that's how people get around all sorts of things or not.
Absolutely. I mean, we take it as commonplace, don't we? Everybody knows about DNA, and we all know about fingerprints, and we all know about. But how do you define psychological control? It is very difficult to do, and it's also very, very difficult to prove. And the reason this goes on so often is because it's so easy to get away with.
Yeah, because and now we use these terms we haven't had before, like gaslighting, for example.
Yes, which I don't know what it means.
Well, I don't want to botch it, but it's to try and say I started to really undermine you and was like, oh, you don't look good in this, or you don't something, and then you'd say, well, you said I think, and I'd go, I never said that. I think you look great.
Yes. The one I think of always whenever I hear the phrase gaslighting is that wonderful old film, which is based on a play in which the husband controls the wife by turning down the gas lamps and altering the darkness of the room.
Yeah, I guess the implication is similar. I don't know if that would be like the modern definition of what gaslighting
that's
is.
What I imagine.
But yeah, I mean, the gaslighting is that's a really common parlance. There's a lot of wording that we didn't have before around, especially around dating, terms like ghosting, breadcrumbing.
I don't know what that is.
So breadcrumbing is when somebody, you start dating someone and they're quite offish with you, but then they'll literally give you little crumbs of attention.
Oh, I see.
So they'll sort of just enough,
Just enough, but not too much.
To keep you holding on, but not enough to, and then obviously the opposite to that is this thing, love bombing, where somebody is, doesn't pay you attention, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to leave. And they're like, here's loads of presents. I love you so much. All the best thing that's ever happened to you.
Yes.
There is a lot more vocabulary around
But it's vocabulary that's almost the most important thing, the actual nature of the words we use to describe what we do. And it's vital in any kind of crime to talk about, to look at the language. And I think that makes it easier because we're more sophisticated now, but we still have a lot to learn. The kind of language that you use is vital.
And actually, interestingly, what we were talking about last episode, like, it wouldn't have been thought to look at that person's childhood. Like, Freud didn't exist, Jung didn't, psychoanalysis didn't exist in the same way. So actually, even that stuff, is, as you would say, just you said earlier about forensics and DNA, it's like, it's all relatively new.
Yes, oh yes.
In terms of how we analyze a person, and then to swing us back round to the question of nature, nurture. Is someone born evil?
Yes.
What makes someone do what they do?
Right. Well, today's case is an excellent example of all those things. Believe it or not.
What are we doing today?
We're doing a lady called Lakhvir Singh, and I'm going to call her the curry killer. There's no need to snigger.
Are you allowed to do that? Okay, it's not just because she's Indian.
Not just because she's Indian. And there is a real reason why she's called the curry killer.
Okay, the curry killer.
Lakhvir Singh came to this country. She was born in approximately 1966. And she came to this country and had an arranged marriage to another Sikh, and they lived in Southall. He was hard-working. She was a housewife, a conventional Indian. They had 3 children. It was part of that Indian community, the Sikh community in Southall. Also, in that same community was a man called Lakhvinder, Lucky Chima. His nickname was Lucky. Quite handsome, a young man. He'd also had an arranged marriage, but he was younger. Had an arranged marriage, but it broke down. And Lucky Chima became a lodger in the house of Lakhvir Singh and her husband and their children. Lakhvir Singh's husband was unfortunately not very well. And indeed, he contracted cancer, but he was persistently unwell. And Lakhvir Singh, a lady of, not old, by no means. She was about 6 or 7 years older than Lucky Chima, started a relationship with Lucky. It started when he was comparatively young, 22. She'd had her children, and the relationship lasted for 16 years. So it's a ménage à trois, if you like, because they're both all living in the same house. But then Lucky Chima, because he wants to get on in the world, and he got a job, really quite a good job, with Rent-A-Kill. He became a sort of expert, and eventually got together enough money to move out of the house which he'd been sharing with Lakhvir Singh and her husband and the children. And he got some lodgers in his new house, also in Southall, nearby. Anyway, Lucky Chima has got to about the age of 38 and 39 when I think he decided that he wanted to, quote, settle down. and he wanted an arranged marriage again. Now, bear in mind, Lakhvir Singh, all the while, throughout these 16 years, and particularly after he moved out, she still went round to his house to clean it, to do the washing for him. When he'd been living with them, she did all that. And when he moved out, she still did it. You know, it's a kind of determination, very, in many ways, very loyal. So Lucky's sister introduces him eventually to a lady called Gurjit Chong, who was only 22. Really quite a beautiful Sikh lady. They met at the Sikh mosque in Southall. Well, Lucky has been lucky. You might say he likes his bread buttered on both sides. I mean, he's been looked after by Lakhvir, and now he decides that I've decided I'm going to end that relationship and I'm going to get engaged to Gurjit. Well, he announces this in November. Let me get the date exactly right. November 2008. Unsurprisingly, Lakhvir Singh does not take kindly to this announcement that he's going to marry a much younger woman after all the time she spent lavishing help and support upon him, not to mention other benefits. So she goes to India. She takes off back to India. Incidentally, her husband had also been being treated in India as well as in England for his cancer. So she goes to India. And while she's in India, she writes him a whole series of very angry letters saying, if I find you in bed with Gurjit, I'm going to burn the house down with you both in it. Okay? We could say, hell hath no fury. She goes to India, but while she's in India, she avails herself of aconite, or sometimes known as the Queen of Poisons, sometimes also known as wolfsbane. For those of you who like Harry Potter, it appears from time to time in Harry Potter. It was always said to be the one poison that you couldn't identify. It was, as the legend was, that it couldn't be identified. But in fact, in modern toxicology, you could. And she acquires a considerable quantity of this powder, aconite. When she gets back to this country in December 2008, Lucky seems suddenly to be taken ill, and he has to go to hospital. He's vomiting, and he's really not at all well, and several days in hospital. And he gradually recovers. Now, at that point, I doubt that Lucky put two and two together. In other words, he didn't think the fact that I'm ill has meant that my previous lover, who's very angry about me getting engaged to some other younger woman, might actually have been poisoning me. I don't think he twigged it at that point. Perhaps not unlike the mushroom lady in Australia. Nobody twigged that they were going to be poisoned with mushrooms.
I mean, that is such a good case.
We'll
do it one day.
One day. So Lakhvir, who's quite used to going round to Lucky's house, in January, the end of January, 28th of January, I think, 2009, Lakhvir turns up at Lucky's house, and he's got lodgers, and they're in the kitchen, and she goes to the fridge. I mean, she's quite used to, she's often there, because she prepares meals for them, extraordinary. She prepares meals for them, and with her back to the people who are in the kitchen, she takes what's left of a curry out of his drawer in the fridge and sprinkles something on it. Puts it back in the Tupperware, back in the fridge, and leaves. Nobody thinks very much about it. I mean, they're quite used to her coming and going. Anyway, that evening, Lucky and Gurjit, who by this time are cohabiting in his house, return home, and Lucky, who's had a hard day, consumes 2 helpings of the said curry, the leftover curry which had been prepared, whereas Gurjit, who hasn't been feeling particularly well, only has a very small portion. Within an hour of him eating the curry, he's feeling dreadfully ill. Dreadfully. And Gurjeet isn't much better. So he phones 999 and says, I think I need an ambulance. I'm feeling terribly unwell. And he says, and it's wonderful, he says, I think I've been poisoned by my ex-girlfriend. Lucky's sister gets Gurjeet and Lucky into her car and drives them to the hospital. Within 1 hour, just after 2:30 in the morning, Lucky dies.
Wow.
And Gurjeet is put into a medically induced coma because she's had very little of the... Well, the hospital, not surprisingly, called the police because this seems all very odd. I mean, put on top of the 999 call and, you know, and we got one lady in a coma. We've got a dead man at 2:30 in the morning. Now, fortunately, Gurjeet recovers. But it doesn't take the police very long to put 2 and 2 together and say, well, hang on a minute, the ex-girlfriend sounds like a good suspect to me or to us. So Lakhvir Singh is arrested for the murder of Lucky Chima and the attempted murder of Gurjeet. The trial began on the 6th of January 2010 at the Old Bailey. And particular attention was paid by the prosecution to the cruel nature of aconite poisoning. We should explain, aconite poisoning means that you don't die of the poison, you die of asphyxiation. You're awake all the time. You're just, in the end, unable to breathe. It's a particularly unpleasant and very difficult to trace, or was very difficult to trace. So the prosecution is saying she must have, you know, it's absolutely clear. Spurned lover. Lakhvir, to her, says, no, it wasn't me. It was my brother, Verinder, who earlier the day in which they'd eaten the curry, had been round to tell Gurjeet that Lucky Chima was two-timing on her with his sister. You know, it's a conventional, you know, actually what you don't know is he's cheating on you. And Lakhvir, to her eternal, I suppose, side, says, anyway, how could I possibly have killed someone I love? I loved him. Didn't want him dead. On the contrary. Well, it's actually quite a significant and powerful argument. And the jury were not absolutely sure what to make of this. In the end, they convicted Lakhvir of killing Lucky Chima, but not of the attempted murder of Gurjeet. They didn't believe
she was trying to
kill her.
Yeah, I kind of get that.
It makes sense, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But you can see what was there in their mind. She was merely convicted of causing grievous bodily harm to Gurjeet. There was no doubt in the end about where the poison came from. I mean, the people who had been in the kitchen had seen her tamper with the curry. There was a clear motive. You can see how the evidence would have tipped in the end to conviction, wouldn't you? And in February, the 10th of February 2010, he was convicted. But she was also, funnily enough, acquitted of poisoning him earlier in the December. Remember, he'd gone to hospital after she'd come back from India. Yeah. She wasn't convicted of that either. She was merely convicted of the killing of Lucky. Now, the Crown, in the prosecution, sought life with a minimum of 30 years. But given the gravity of the premeditation and the horridness of the crime, but in fact, the judge decided that Lakhvir should get life with a minimum of 23 years. The judge said, and I quote, "You set about a cold and calculated revenge. You were not just a spurned lover."
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine being really annoyed if I was her, but...
Well,
not that that's an excuse.
No, it isn't an excuse. Obviously not. It's a particularly grisly crime, really, because it's so cold. I think the judge is right. It's very cold. She didn't take a knife and stab him or hit him over the head with a rolling pin or anything like that. She thought, no, I'm going to get...
Yeah, it wasn't like a crime of passion in the moment, was it?
No, it wasn't. And it's the same. I mean, it's the classic quote, isn't it, from Congreve. I think it was a play called The Mourning Bride in 1697. "Heaven has no rage like love to hatred turned, nor hell a fury like a woman scorned." I think it's an interesting case because, again, we're dealing with a female murderess. You can see where the passion is. She wasn't killing for money, as we've done before. She was killing for jealousy, for revenge, and out of rage, and very, very powerful emotions in every way.
If I can't have you, no one can.
No one else is going to have you, yes. Which is a very famous one.
I sometimes wonder about those things, though, like actually in the cold light of day, however many years afterwards when she sat in prison.
Yeah.
Like, did she... I sometimes wonder if people think about the gravity of death. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does.
Because I think that a lot of times I've talked about that before, and about how when young people commit crime, I genuinely think a lot of the time they don't know what they're doing.
They don't
really
know the impact of what it is.
Really know what it means to take someone's life. Like, you don't, if you're between the ages of 14 or sadly younger and 25, even older, I would argue, I don't think you truly understand what it means.
Yes, the concept of death is quite distant.
Yeah, the impact of it, the kind of actual, Yeah,
I think one of the other complicating factors in this case is we've got to be very wary of bringing what you might describe as Judeo-Christian attitudes to what is essentially arranged marriages, and it's sometimes quite difficult for us to judge that.
Yeah,
we've got to be a little careful.
Yeah, agreed. But I mean, when you break down the kind of emotional responses, they're probably
yes. Well, yes, they are. I mean, there's no doubt the emotional responses are the same, but similar. But the whole background, two arranged marriages, and then another arranged marriage, which has been approved by the family, and then the lover, Lakhvir, throws a spanner in the works and kills him. If I can't have him, you won't have him. Yes, that's a very familiar emotional equation, but I hesitate because I don't know enough about.
Yeah, it's a different backdrop to what you're used to.
Yes,
yeah, that makes sense.
But that's the case of Lakhvir Singh, another poisoner, especially for you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I didn't know anything about that at all.
No, I thought it was a good case, actually.
I mean, that makes sense to me. I know we're not supposed to be talking about the beef Wellington lady, but it is weird to me that it was. Well, I don't know enough about it, like why it was her in-laws that she was like, these are the ones that got to go.
Yeah. Well, let's leave the mushroom lady because she's got 28 days to appeal. So you never know. She might.
She might. She will probably, don't you think? Oh, well, we won't.
It's possible. It's possible.
It's just so. So interesting.
It is. And it's a great case, but we'll do it once we know what the resolution is, and otherwise we could be accused of affecting the outcome.
Yeah, very good. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Is there anything jolly you'd like to tell me about?
What shall I tell you about this jolly? I told you I watched a lot of All the Waterfront. This is a Netflix series, which I thought was extremely good. I've watched a 4-part documentary on the London bombings.
I've only watched the first episode.
Very, very good, I thought. Yeah. They had everybody.
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
I've got yet more, documentaries of one shape or form or another. And
just got a summer full of murder, haven't you, Dad?
Yeah, summer full of murder.
Yeah. Jolly.
Well, on the other hand, as we've talked about this before, Mo, it kind of happens to you. At least it happened to me. And you find yourself talking about murder a lot. Molly is giggling.
How did you end up here?
I'm not sure, but I did.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all the people that help us, our producer Peter, my brother Dan, who did the music, my friend George, who drew our caricature, to Geoffrey, who does all the hard work, and to you, the listeners, thank you so much.
Thank you for both of us. We really appreciate you being there. We really love to hear from you. I think Molly's going to give you all sorts of details.
Oh yeah, all the details of how to contact us will be in the show notes. We're terrible at remembering, but we've an email, bloodties.podcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on Instagram, bloodties_pod.
And you can find me if you Google me.
Just Google Geoffrey, that will lead you to everything you need.
Yeah, because you can contact me that way. But we do genuinely like to hear. We like suggestions, we like comments. Indeed, we just like the feeling of knowing what you like, what you don't like, what you want us to do. Some of the best ideas we've ever done have come from listeners. Very much so. I always think of Heavenly Creatures, that wonderful story of the two New Zealand.
Yeah, that one was good.
Well, that was suggested by a listener. So thank you again for listening. And unfortunately, bad things happen to good people, so do be careful out there.